Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday Takeover and we're so excited because we are celebrating and bringing you some great conversations centered around Native American Heritage Month. And so I am Mary Levi. I am the chair of the American Indian Alaska Native Caucus for CTA, fourth grade teacher here in Upland Unified School District. And I'd just like to start off before we start acknowledging and seeing everybody and who's in our panel today. I'd like to just take a time and do our land acknowledgement for our meeting today. And because this is just what we do. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories throughout California, home to nearly 200 tribal nations. And as we begin our takeover today, let us acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of our various regions. Along with our land that we acknowledge that where we are and the who's as well as you occupy this land, let's not forget that we also are in balance with our plant life, our fish, our ocean life, our water life, our plant life, our four-legged or two-legged, all of those animal life that we have among our California lands. And so with this, we are going to hopefully, when we're going to do this, we acknowledge this and bring more light into what our Native communities are in the present, what stories we need to bring out for in the past, and let go of some of the things that we know should not be there, like mission projects. Okay, with that, would you please in the chat acknowledge the land and the area that you are currently occupying, and we for the purposes for our Tuesday takeover. Thank you. So today we get to have wonderful women who are going to be engaged in conversation, and it's so nice to see our up and coming leaders in CTA that have knowledge about our tribal communities, engage in what they're doing in the classroom, and what they're doing within CTA as well. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce Christine. Hi, Christine. I wanted you to give us your full name, um, and what's your name? What's your role in education? How long have you been doing it? And so go ahead.
All right. Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Christina Alanis. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I would like to quickly just do my land acknowledgement as well from where I am. I acknowledge and thank my Cahuilla and Serrano relations on whose ancestral lands I reside, gather, and work. I honor all of the ancestors and their descendants here today and the contributions of all of our relatives, past, present, and future. And this is my 12th year in education. I'm an elementary school teacher. I started out actually teaching at a tribal school here on Morongo in the Morongo Indian Reservation. And I now teach in Palm Springs Unified. And yep, I teach second grade this year. So I have the little ones.
So another question I have for all of you when we get to you is, how has your Native American background impacted your role in education and your activism?
Oh, okay, I'll go ahead. So then just going off of what I had said before, I started my career actually teaching at the Morongo Tribal School. They just opened in 2010. I actually grew up on the Indian reservation here, and for me, it was just, I would say growing up, I didn't really see how education was very important for me, to be quite honest, because I just, it was just such a different experience leaving the reservation, going into public school. going to school in the 80s and 90s, it was a different experience, and there was a lot of bullying, a lot of, it just wasn't a very good experience for me. And then, so then when I had children, I grew up, got married, had kids, started helping in their school. Then I realized I just had this calling of like, I just want to be a teacher. And so I went back to school. The tribe that I'm enrolled, or that I'm a descendant of, they they have a scholarship, so I was able to have my school taken care of, which was amazing. And now I was able to contribute and give back to my tribe by working at the school. And now I'm just doing everything I can to continue to advocate for our Native youth, because it is so important, because I know from my own experience of how hard it is being a Native youth in school, and Native student, and also now as a Native teacher, how it's really important. So that just really drives my activism.
Nice. Ni- So our next panelist is Nakiba Gregory. Nakiba, same thing. What's your name, your role in education, and how long have you been there? And then how has your Native American background impacted your role in education?
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. My name is Nakiba Gregory. I'm Lenina Lenape. It's a tribe in Oklahoma. I have taught art and history in West Sacramento for 22 years. At this time, I'm only teaching art. My identity has definitely shaped my role as an educator. One of the things is that, it's always been something that has affected me when you hear things that are being taught in school. And I've always just kept my mouth shut. I've never spoken up. I never spoke up in class. I never spoke up as an educator. I never spoke up at all. I just internalized everything. And honestly, it wasn't until I got involved with EAME ID, which is the Ethnic Minority Early Identification Program, that I actually found my voice. And so for me, that was huge. I mean, I never spoke up at staff meetings or anything. Now I'm definitely an advocate for anyone that needs their voice told, but especially our Native youth. I've been working in Indian education in my district for 13 years, and I've seen the best and the worst in our program. One of the things that I really think that there should be is a Native LEA that runs the program instead of someone else. But, I've been involved in that, and that has definitely driven me to advocate for our Native youth. But, CTA has been huge in being able to give us a voice, especially through the EAME ID program. And so now the activism in all different aspects, with American Indian Caucus, REAC, in all different areas. Yes.
Nice. Thank you, Nakiba. I'm going to go to Jackie, Dr. Jackie Kopp. Tell us about you, your name, and your role in education, and for how long, and the impact of being your Native American background.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jackie Kopp. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Hemet Unified School District, and I'm also the lead teacher there. I've been in education for 10 years and in public school for 9. I work at a very highly populated Native area because I'm by the Kauai Reservation. I forgot to do my land acknowledgement. I'm by the Kauai Mountain people, and my Native American background allowed me to have a lot of insight when I came to work here. It was familiar. I also grew up here. And I'm Washoe from Lake Tahoe area. So I grew up with a lot of the same values. I just didn't grow up on a reservation. So I do miss those pieces and stuff that Christina talks about. But everything Christina said, I saw when I got this job at 24 teaching. I saw those kids who didn't have a purpose for education, and I really wanted to do something about it, and I just didn't know what to do. I spoke up a little bit, not too much, but I did let my admin know I'm Native American. I really care about these kids. They need help. And there's a lot of issues with that. Many educators at our school didn't understand the Native culture up here. And at least I've been able to share about some norms and traditions and cultures and kind of be that connection. So it's not so scary. They're more pulled on the inside now.
That's excellent. Nice. It's all, I will say that in my years of teaching, and I'm a 30-year educator, um, it's been lonely. I feel lonely being wherever I am. And it's so nice to have more people engaged and more, especially our native, and you're young. You guys are young. And it's good because, you want to bring in our leadership. And so that's excellent. Um, I'm going to give you a second set of questions. And one of the questions is, what are the top issues facing Native American educators, students, and communities? So I'm going to start with Christina.
All
What do you
right.
think our top issues are?
Oh wow. Gosh, right now I would have to say just really the appropriation of our culture in the classrooms in so many different ways. Um, it's that I feel like that to me has always been there, and it's one of those things that now we're seeing that it's just kind of been excused all this time. And so for example, just right now we're coming up on Thanksgiving, so we know every month this happens, and um, this has always been a false narrative, the way the way that the school system has always taught this holiday. And so, some schools go all out with dressing kids up as Indians and pilgrims, and some schools try not to, but they still. So anyway, that's just something I know that is a constant challenge because it's hard to speak up against something like that when you're the only voice or you're at only a few voices in that mix. Because it's, when society has shown it that it's like, oh, it's this is how it is and this is how it was, it makes our voices seem like, silenced. I guess we're silenced. And so for me, that's something I feel like has always been a big challenge that we face, just the appropriation of our culture in all these things when it comes to mascots and, just acting in class and doing different things, without really understanding the harm of that.
Yeah. Nakiba, what do you think our top issues are in facing Native American educators, students, and communities?
Um, I think not telling the truth about what really happened in history. I think that if you are reading the history books, you would think that there's only a very few tribes that are represented across the USA. And there's very few individuals that's ever done anything as a Native person throughout history. I mean, there's just a few names that are even mentioned. And
Mhm.
so it just looks like that Native people are not important, and when they are mentioned, they're made to look like fools. They were tricked into, doing treaties, or, they fought and were defeated and conquered. And it just always makes them not look like they're strong or they're worthy opponents in history. And I think that that's one of the things that always been kind of a difficult thing. Like when I was teaching history, we're supposed to be teaching the curriculum that we were given, and you're being pulled in two directions. You want to do what you're told to by the district, but you're also fighting against what you feel inside. And um, and we just perpetuate the myth year after year after year, and we can't change society unless we tell the truth. So I
Right.
think that is one of the biggest things. My son was part of a little league team, and he was that big red faced Indian that use,
Mm-hmm.
I guess is it Cleveland Indians that they
Cleveland.
used? And I was embarrassed. My son, he didn't seem to. I mean, he was young, but I was embarrassed. And then they would have that little league parade and doing that tomahawk chop and, just I always felt very embarrassed about that to even be on the float that was on that. But I think those are two of the big issues.
Right, right. Dr. Jackie, what do you think?
It makes me happy hearing you guys say these things because Mary's talking about being isolated. Sometimes I think I have these ideas and I must be
Mm-hmm.
crazy, but
Yeah.
nobody else sees it this way, but I'm feeling better about this.
Uh-huh.
That issue I see in my community here is the desire to even want an education.
Mm-hmm.
There's a parent at my school. He's also my friend. I grew up with him. He says, "Oh, my daughter, she ain't gonna learn nothing from that school. Like, I teach her what she needs to know." So there's that mentality. Like, home life and education through the tribe is very important. But what's public school going to give my kid? So what I see is that desire to even want to go to public school, and it comes from generational trauma. We have these. He wasn't successful in school, and then you go back a little bit, not that much further, and you have boarding school behind us. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just that same story where public school has nothing to offer. And then Nakiba saying everything about what we teach in history. Well, then they get older, and it's like, no wonder why. We're just telling these myths again, so they don't feel connected. And so I think that leads to a lot of mental and emotional issues with
Mm-hmm.
school around it, and we ignore all of that. And we don't understand, why are they not doing well in school? Why are they being suspended?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it all connects together.
So, do you think that, and I'm going to just kind of bounce off of that.
Mhm.
There's like you find there's two sets of education when you go through school. You get the stories and you get the history of how your parents, your grandparents, and everybody when they're through their educational experiences through boarding schools, through tribal schools, through how they receive that education, and you hear stories from parents, your parents, your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, even in my generation, my cousins, because they went to Riverside Sherman. Um, then you get the story of when you're sitting in a public school classroom and you hear that story. And the two stories, when you go home, don't mix. And then you go, so I'm going to go with my family. And I don't care about this part. I don't care about going, and hearing this every single time and perpetuating the untruths that are being told. How we welcomed everything. We wanted it all. And so that's the generational, I hear what you're saying, the generational trauma that even though I didn't experience boarding schools, I've experienced it through the stories of family, right? And I think that's where we get that from. Yeah. So another question is, you kind of jumped on it, is what are some of the issues you've had to personally face on how are you working on them um, to overcome them? And that's just kind of like something that we were just talking about, that educational trauma that you hear the mixed messages. Christina, what do you think?
Um, I would say, it's interesting because kind of, just continuing what we've been talking about and what Jackie had mentioned as well with her concern. Um, like I had said, I was one of those kids that I didn't feel like education was important. We had our own little family business here on the reservation that I would have to always help and work at anyway. And so it was just like, I couldn't place, it was just different. Like I was home, had things to do here, school, it's like, no, and then all of a sudden I felt like there wasn't anyone really to look out for me. We had one really awesome um, educator who was always there looking out for our native kids, and she's still around, and um, and so it was just that one person in our Indian club, but I just didn't feel, I didn't see where the need was to go beyond that
Mm-hmm.
until I had my own kids. And when I had my own children, because I didn't go to college right away, you know, um, and so when I had my own children, then I was like, wait a second. And then I started volunteering in school. And then I saw some of the same things again. And that's where I thought to myself, well, how can I make a difference? How can I give back to my community? I can become a teacher, and that's how I can give back to my community.
Mm-hmm.
And this job is so hard already. And then being a native teacher, it's
Mm-hmm.
extremely difficult. And so it's hard for me to think like, you know, because now I have students that I taught who have just graduated high school, and the kids that are going to be graduating high school. And I'm like, come on, kid, would you want to be teachers? Come on, we need more, you know, Native youth teachers. But at the same time, you know, I understand why a lot of them are like, no way, I'm not going to be a teacher.
Right.
Because one, it depends on their experience. Would somebody, you know, show them that that's something that's going to be important? And also, you know, it's just hard to try to you know, to explain how important it is to have more teachers who look like us and who are
Right.
native teachers with all these backgrounds, because we can really relate to to our kiddos, you know. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's a hard job, and I'm, you know, deal with our own generational trauma as we're doing the job, but yet it's necessary for our kids.
Yeah, that's when you want to tell them they can be activists just like anybody else. You can't change the narrative unless you're in there having a voice. Nakiba, what do you think?
Well, besides the generational trauma, there is also family trauma. You know, so many of the families are dealing with socioeconomic issues. They're dealing with domestic violence and um, uh, drugs and alcohol. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's prevalent in the Native culture. And I'm going to just be honest because, you know, I think that we can't change things unless we address it and we're honest about it. I was not raised on a reservation, but I married a man that was. And he brought all of those social issues right into our family. And we definitely had problems with drug and alcohol abuse with him and domestic violence. And it was very difficult because I still had to go to work every day acting like everything was normal. And it made me really understand our other kids in another aspect, because I understood that when they were coming to school, they're acting like nothing is happening at home, but things are
Mm-hmm.
happening at home. You know, so you know, we tried, you know, the rehab and counseling and all of that, and he wasn't going to change. It was just too much a part of him. And so, you know, I had to put my family first. And, you know, being a child that my father had left when I was young, I had that whole abandonment issue thing going on. And I didn't want my kids to be without their father, but I had to put my kids first and just say, you know, that is not okay. So that's a whole other issue that kids are dealing with in the Native community, is all of that. So they're bringing that to school also. Um, so that is a whole nother level
Mm-hmm.
that we've had to deal with.
Good point. Jackie, what do you think?
That got my mind going so much because I
I
see
know.
so many of those things happening. And there's so much where even moms deal with that stuff, where they're going to choose their family or their addiction that's happening on the reservation. We have moms leaving too, which I think was different for me. You don't usually hear about that. So some
Right.
issues I've personally faced was me coming into my school and my community, coming back to teach. And there was just a lot of misunderstandings with the tribe, the local tribe, and very poor communication. I really tried to urge that, she's a past admin now, for her to like do something about it, because they would sit in meetings at school and say, oh, chronic absenteeism, all our Native kids, they don't show up to school. And they would say these negative things. And I'd say, well, did you call the tribal chairman? Did you try to like call somebody and ask what's going on? She's like, no, we don't talk to them. We won't go there. And it was really sad, and it was really hard. It was very disheartening. And I gave up for a while too, until I went to EAME, and it kind of put a fire underneath me again to like, no, I can't be quiet about this. I need to speak up.
Right.
To combat all these issues. And then one thing I've done to overcome it was EMID helped me a ton. And then I finally got the nerve and the guts and the confidence. I started Native Club at my school last year during COVID. So some of them were virtual, not a lot of participation. This year in person, and they're going really well. And it just gives the kids time to come together, just an hour away once a month from what they're doing, and have space and time together. So that, I think, is going to change a lot. And it's also bringing awareness to all the other educators on campus when we're doing this. It's the only club that is on campus. So I think it's going well.
Don't you find that our Native youth and our Native families, they're very social. I mean, it really is something that is part of our community, is that they're social, and you bring people together and you just start listening to stories from one another, and it's just, it just feels like home sometimes. It just feels like it's all, especially when you can hear songs and hear stories, and then create is a big part of that. Good. We're going to go on to our third set of questions. We're kind of a little early on our, but what can CTA do better to support Native educators and students and communities? What could CTA do for us? And I'm already hearing, which is so exciting, that the EMEID um, program is going so well, especially for our Native people, which is, brings like such joy to my heart. So, Christina, what can we do? What can CTA do? Help us to support?
Yes, I was going to say, yeah, I know Jackie and Nakiba mentioned it. I also am an EMEID. I'm actually a current participant of EMEID. And that was an amazing program that I just kind of stumbled upon. And so I would say that CTA could probably, we could work on, I guess, promoting that or advertising that more, so more of our educators know about it. I don't know if maybe it is in certain chapters or certain areas, but I know for myself, my own experience was I didn't know about it, and I happened to find it on the website. So, but it is amazing. It's an amazing program, and it's really helped me to, I guess what we kind of said before was like, I feel now that I have support and the backing for what I already feel in my heart is important activism. If that makes sense. Like I've already always felt this, and I've always tried really hard to advocate, and I felt like I was always hitting a wall and no one was hearing me until I found out that CTA and this program, and that I do have support, and I have the backing of CTA with my advocacy for social justice for our Native youth and our Native students and teachers and community.
That's fun. Nice, nice, nice. Nakiba.
Well, again, EMEID. I cannot speak too highly of it. It gave me a voice where I have always been quiet and never got involved in anything. The other thing I liked about the EMEID is that it showed us what CTA has to offer, like being involved in state council, being involved in NEA representative assembly, being able to, American Indian Caucus, to be able to be part of that and to address Native issues, to be able to be a part of REACT, and to be able to bring up issues and make sure that Native issues are being spoken about and accurately in California Educator, that Native educators are being seen and heard, that the issues like Mary, we all just wrote that 3 new NBIs, new business items. Those are the kind of things that really excite me because I know that we're making a difference. We're creating some change. And so I think that CTA is going in the right direction of being able to advocate for Native people and being able to make us seen and heard. I do think that we need to find more Native educators. We need to find a way to be able to go out and recruit. I don't know how that could be, but we need to recruit. We also need to make sure that I like the whole idea of Native education for all. That I know other states are doing it, and that every child learns about Native education is wonderful. That Native kids are learning about their own culture is beautiful. I don't know a single Native person that does not want their children and grandchildren, everybody to learn more things. So I definitely think that, focusing on Indian education in the curriculum, either after school, like a club, or in school. But I think that just with ethnic studies and truth in education, I think we can make a change. So I like all these advocate programs that we have going on. I think that we're moving in the correct direction.
Nice. I like the way you brought that up. We're going to come back to that, by the way. Jackie.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what she said. Just, I know Nakiba said it earlier, but ethnic minority early identification development program, they were saying we should say that, was amazing for me. It changed everything. CTA is already in the right direction. Like, just having this platform and having these conversations are so important, and we have that space. It helps raise awareness and everything. I was like rattling my brain trying to think outside the box. I didn't even think of Native teacher recruitment. That would be amazing. I was thinking along the lines, something they could do more would be maybe some racial healing from the public school system. Just hearing Christina's story of the resistance of being younger and then coming in, that takes a lot of courage. And we have a lot more students who might take that same path, a lot more Native youth who might want to do something like that. So that was what I thought. I don't know how CTA would do it, but how do we show what public school has to offer for everybody?
Correct. I think the encouragement of going into education is a huge a part of changing the dialogue. And the governor started the Commission on Truth and Healing that has been going up and down the state of California for the last, I want to say 2-3 months, and doing webinars, kind of doing people calling in and saying, what are you thinking? How are we going to heal? And a lot of that conversation up and down California with all of the tribes has been to educate, and it has been centered around education. And the way we're going to change and the dialogue will be to change the narrative within our schools. And then the only way of doing that is bringing in Native educators and identifying Native educators. Now, I will tell you, it's been lonely for a little bit, because when I first started with CTA and got really involved in state council, I will say that I had an at-large director who was Marty Meaden, and he was the first Native director to be for CTA, and he was the one who brought me in. He, as a part of his job was he made connections into our Native communities, and I feel like at some point, as soon as his terms were up, we stopped doing that. We stopped connecting, having a point person as somebody who goes in and is free to go into our Native communities and give workshops or give talks about what it means to be a teacher and what that dialogue would look like. So I know that Christina is really close to, is on Morongo. So everybody she talks to, she talks about education. I know Jackie is close to, is it Santa Rosa? Are you up there? You talk about education and you talk about among educators about education. And there have been times when I sat in CTA meetings where they've talked about the data is less than 1%. So our Native American educators or students or issues is so minute. It's not even on the data chart. So it's so insignificant because that's the way they talk. I mean, data is the insignificant data. But when you hear it, even among our own educators, when you hear it, it hits to the heart. We're not insignificant. There's a huge voice out there, and we have many, many tribal representation in our public school. So, as Nakiba said, coming from having Native education for all and not just fourth grade or fifth grade or eighth grade, and maybe touching upon it in 11th grade is not enough because everything we do in California, including that has to do with tribal communities, has to be voted on by the whole population of California. And if we don't educate everybody, then every time they come up to vote, they're always going to go, "Oh, you're the casino people." Or you're the people who have all that land over there, and it's always going to backfire because they are not educated. So what do we do in our classrooms and for our students? We educate. And what do we do for our educators? We educate in the spaces that we have. So let's go back to how what we wish CTA could do for what we see that CTA, the possibilities of what CTA could do, or even our directors, or even fellow educators. What is the possibilities that could be done? So I'm going to go to Christina.
Wow, so many things that was already said. It's just amazing. I have to say again, it's just so important that we somehow, and I love what Jackie was saying too, there's something that we can do to really, you know, get more Native youth, more Native students, more Native, even, I don't even want to say youth. I mean, just even elders or people who just need a second job right now and they're in their community or they need a job, period. And, because I feel like sometimes too, education has a stigma of being like not an important job or it's not this and that or whatever, but it is so crucial for our children. And so, and again, it's not easy, but yet if there's some way, my wish would be that we could just somehow show the importance of it, that even though it is going to be a struggle, that the reward for how we can impact our communities is so much more important, right? It's what that's why we're still here. It's what our ancestors
Right.
fought for, to have us here, to continue to educate beyond, like you said, for all, not just our small communities, because then eventually who else is going to know? And Mary made a perfect point, because I just thought about back when Prop 5 came around, and I was out here at the with my mom and everybody, and my daughter was just a toddler, and and of course so much backlash from people in the state that just don't even understand like how significant that was for our community, our communities, and so it's just again, it's just with ignorance or people not understanding the impact of what's going on in these communities. And so education is so important. So if we can find a way to really encourage more Native educators, that would be my wish.
Nice. Nakiba.
I saw in the chat that they wanted us to explain what EMEID was.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an ethnic minority early identification program. It is to get people that are BIPOC into leadership. Often we are not allowed to get involved in leadership positions where the door is shut every time that we want to get involved. So what this does is gives an opportunity for us to be able to learn how to get involved in leadership, find out what our passion is, and then support us on our goals to be able to get involved. That's what the EAME program. It's a 1-year program. But what's nice about it is that it's the networking with other EAME participants across the state helps us to work at our local level through each other. So that is the part that is really powerful in the whole program. I do think that we need to have trainings for teachers. We need to get teachers to teach the truth in their classrooms. We need to stop the mockery and the different things that are going on in classrooms. You know, every Thanksgiving, of course, we come up with this, but anytime in missions, you know, anything that has to do with what's normally taught in education, we need to give teachers resources to be able to have an alternative instead of doing what they've always done.
Yeah.
You know, once they know what they should be doing, then hopefully they will make those choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we need to give teachers a lot of training of not only what some biases that are there or things that they may have think that is appropriate but is not appropriate.
Right.
We also need, you know, besides providing the resources, we need to actually be able to address all the wrongs that have been done in the past. Because, you know, if we don't get that healing, things are not going to change. So, I mean, I know that we're talking about healing all other, you know, BIPOC members, but we have our own healing that needs to be done. I mean, the land has been taken whenever it was seemed important, you know, for colonization, gold rush, whatever the case may be. The land keeps getting taken and then people are put on reservations or, you know, don't get to have any land. Another issue is like my tribe will only give grants or scholarships to people who are going into the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
There's this misunderstanding about how Native people get money, that there's this thought that all Native people have so much money to be able to go to education for free. I'm still paying for my student loans. I didn't get any help because I went into education instead of the medical field.
Yeah.
And, you know, casinos. A lot of the casinos put the money right back into the community. People are not getting great big checks. So, you know, there's a lot of miseducation going along and that needs to stop. We need to let people know what's really happening.
True. True. Jackie, what do you think?
Nakiba kind of took the words that I was going to say was it happens in our classrooms. It happens with the teachers that are here right now who want to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you have a new group of kids, the teachers are the ones who have the power to change everything. And I really always encourage the teachers that when they do start a lesson or they do anything that are on my team, go to that tribe's website. If you're curious about the tribe that I saw in the chat that you're coming from, go directly to their actual website. And usually every tribe has a pamphlet or a brochure or an informational that you can bring right into your class for a lesson for close reading. I've handed it to my 4th grade teachers and my 5th grade teachers from my tribe. I said, look at this pamphlet my family has. And I get really proud too because I'm like, oh, there's my grandparents right there. And I hand it over and they can do close readings with it. That's how it doesn't have to be a huge curriculum. It doesn't have to be this extraordinary thing. just go to the actual website, print out their
Mm-hmm.
information from them, from their elders, and use that for your lessons. So
And there's so many, and I'm going to jump off of that, Jackie. There are so many resources now that are available that honestly weren't available even 6 years ago.
mhm.
You know, you go to the Smithsonian American Indian National Museum, and they got Knowledge 360 on all the tribes, and that tribes have given information of what they want to be taught to be put into lessons. Tribes are making their own lessons. So, you know, and Christina knows that through Agua Caliente. The Shumash tribe just put out all of their website on their website of everything that is available. I mean, and Yucat is doing the same thing. Miwok is up there doing the same thing as well. So there's many, and like I said, when you go through and listen to that Truth and Healing Commission, they're all saying it. It's education that is going to be needed. Um, in my own experience through CTA, there was a time when after Marty termed out, and then I was, you know, and everybody retired, seemed like at that time. You stand there and you look around and you're like going, you're thankful for all the people that are surrounding you. But it's like, but where is it coming? Who's next? Who's going to replace me? And who's going to be up and coming? And so when I put out a cry to and went to every one of the CTA board of directors and I said, wherever, whatever space you are, and in your area, you've got to find Native educators. You've got to get them involved. And we got to get, you know, and we got to get more people involved through EAME ID, which wasn't there when when I started. So it's good because then I get to meet everybody and see everybody. And so even Zoom meetings are great because more people are available to go to a Zoom and they're not at state council. So I think those were, it's excellent. I want to continue it, even though I want to see everybody in person, but I want to be able to be more accessible to everybody. Uh, and you're right. I had a teacher who would not let go of teaching about Christopher Columbus on Christopher Columbus going into Indigenous Day. She would not let it go. And I was just like, it hurt my heart and it was so embarrassing. You're perpetuating a story that Christopher never even came here. You know, he was never even setting foot in California. And yet we don't acknowledge all of the students that were relocated from the relocation programs from Arizona and from Oklahoma and from Wisconsin, people who were moved, and why we have such a huge population in California and how our hubs are in Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco and Oakland. Hence why we get that book, There by Tommy Orange, all about what relocation was about. And then we have a boarding school, a federal Indian boarding school in Riverside, which was another hub of why people relocated here. And now we're looking at the trauma of Indian boarding schools and what that is like. So you're right. There's a lot of education that needs to be made. But most important, I think we need to educate our youngest students about the connection to land and the native feeling and why our land is so important because it's home. It's always that is where we are. So, all right, nice. Um, we are at we kind of went over and we were doing so well and kind of talked a little bit more than I probably should. But if there was any questions that were in the chat or if there was any questions that anybody had or if you have something that you would also like to say. I don't see anything in the chat, so I think I'm going to just go bounce off um, of favorite books to read in the classroom, recommendations that you would have for the classroom educator or classroom student. What any recommendations? I do have mine, but I'm going to start with Christina.
Oh, wow. There's so many right now.
I'll be right back.
Okay. I do really love the Water Protectors book that was out recently. That was in relation to Standing Rock, and also how
Right.
all of the tribes' names are on throughout the whole United States on the covers.
Oh, yeah.
I love that one because it's such an interesting way, like we were saying, to really talk about the importance of our water, how it's important to our culture, native culture, how water, right? Water, land, the earth. We're the protectors of Mother Earth, and so it's a beautiful way and illustrations to explain that, and also to help our children, our youth, to understand, even non-natives, to understand the importance of protecting our environment.
Excellent. Excellent. Nakiba.
I really like that book, the Native history book. I'm trying to think of who the author is. She has an adult version and a student version, and they now have lesson plans that go along with it. It's the oh shucks,
It's the history of the
yes,
United States. Uh-huh.
yes, yes, and
Yeah.
I really like that because it's giving it from the native perspective. You know, actually, any of those books that show the native perspective in history is good. Just even like Lies My Teacher Told Me. Those type of books are excellent for students to be able to read and see that everything's been kind of whitewashed, and that whole romanticized or myth that's been told throughout history isn't benefiting anyone. We're going to have responsible citizens if we tell them the truth. Just perpetuating the lie is only harming us.
True. I think it's like the history of the people, indigenous people or something. Jackie has a Amazon Native American history kids activities. Jackie, favorite books, favorite things, and something for the classroom?
Yeah, the one that I like to use, because I teach kindergarten, so
Uh,
I still want to have higher level conversations, but
right?
it gets a little difficult. I found this book to be the easiest with kinder. And when I taught first, it's the Native American history for kids with 21 activities to do. I don't really focus much on the activities because I have my own, but
Mm-hmm.
the way they write the history seems more appropriate to me and more truthful.
Okay.
And it gets into so many different wars, ones that I had to learn about that I didn't know, instead of these generalization ones, the ones we know about.
Right.
It gets into it. And that book really stimulates a lot of conversation, even in kindergartners and first graders.
That's excellent. Nice. So, one book that I read today was The People Shall Continue by Simon Ortiz. It's excellent. I love the pictures. I teach fourth and fifth, and my kids just loved it. I mean, it was really, you could hear the conversations that they have in it. Um, of course, here's all my books, but it was, I love Fry Bread. That's always a good one. Um, the native stories. Um, we Are Grateful coming up. That one's always a fun one to read. Um, I like the California Children of Native American. This one's great for fifth grade because it goes with talking about tribes in the children's perspective and all of across the United States and not just in California. And then, of course, there is the We Are Still Here, which is talks really about all of the stages of California or of Native history. I like the fact that we talk about California Native education for all, and because in not just the United States, because California, if we don't understand what happened within California tribes and California people, how are we going to understand what happens across the United States? And especially from the times of the Spanish, the Mexican, Russian, and immigration, because at the time when gold miners came over, they were immigrating from the United States because we weren't a state at the time. And then what happens with the first governor of California and the Modoc Wars of Northern California? I mean, all of those things, if we don't understand what happens in California, how are we going to understand what happens in the United States? So getting to the heart of all from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and making sure that every student who graduates understands tribal sovereignty, we're never going to be able to change that narrative. And then especially with ethnic studies, I mean, I think that's where it's a small part of it. But if we get California Native education for all, AB 1554, which is what, I will say one of our huge leaders, and knowing that you need somebody having that voice is James Ramos, who is our assemblyman in San Bernardino. Um, Having that key, somebody who leads the way, that's going to be a key part of changing our educational narrative. Um, Anything? We got about 4 minutes. So
I
that
had one little
means,
thing, Mary.
yes,
I
I
feel
was
like
going to
we're doing
say,
it, but you
you
were
only
saying
get 1 minute. Go.
we're talking about books. I have a children's book too that I wrote, Native. It won
Oh,
2 awards. I put the link in there, but you can also email me. I have a ton of copies. I'd rather just
okay.
have one to have at my house. But yeah, I have my Native children's book too because I love to write. And that was traditionally published too, and it won a few awards. It's a modern Native story because we have a lot of old stories, and I wanted to tell new stories.
Oh, excellent. Nice. I'm going to come knock at your door and get
Yeah,
it. Christina.
I love that. I love that so much. I need to write a book. I have notes and I know I want to write, so I need to just get out of my own head. But yeah, I'm just really excited and thankful to be here with everyone and just, so grateful to be with Mary's leadership within the CTA and the American Indian Alaska Native Caucus, everything that you've done um, and all your hard work. And so again, what you had said, you eventually want to retire and move on, right? And like just because and so again, I really hope and I'm grateful and so excited to be here with everyone, and I just hope to continue to bring more people with us because it's so important.
I'm so excited to have you all. Nakiba.
I am very grateful for opportunities like this. I think that Tuesday takeovers is one of the best things that REAC has come up with. I'm so glad that they're continuing to pursue it and keep it going even after virtual education, because this is the way that we can get our voices out there. This is how we can make a change. And the other thing that I would think that we could do that could make a big difference is that we submit articles to the California Educator
Hmm.
and we create more opportunities like this so that we can get our voices out there. And I'm doing my best to recruit, my friends that are educators that are Native into our group. And I just love Mary's leadership. She is helping us so much to be able to have a voice. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you. It was actually a huge honor to be asked to go to the hearing on AB 1554 and talking about what the needs are for California Native education for all. And we're going to have a lot of battles. I think we're going to have a lot of fight. And so I'm just warning you all because that's who I'm going to be calling upon to give to call in when it comes time. We got to call in to the instructional quality curriculum, IQC, about making sure that our native voice is adhered to in the standards. And we got to change some standards and we've got to change some of our curriculum because, if it's not a standard, it's not in my framework, I'm probably not going to teach it. So unless I know that that is the key part of our educational system, then we're going to need to make that known in our California curriculum. So with that being said, we want to thank everybody who even joined us in our conversation. I love having conversations with these women, and we could talk all night. And so we'll set up another Zoom just for us too, so we could solve all the worries of the world. With that being said, Ascoli, from my heart, thank you so much for joining us.